primarily flying international flights. I only fly international flights. Why did I say that?
I've been trying to make my wallet fold all day. Cashing in my dreams, big payout. Underneath my money tree, big shade.
Back to another video on the channel. I'm Brandon, I'm a guy who flies. Today we are diving into a topic that is becoming more and more relevant in today's workplace: pay transparency. So whether you are a flight attendant hopeful or maybe a new applicant and you're looking to get a better understanding of what pay looks like, or if you are a current flight attendant wondering if the grass is greener on the other side, or you would just like to see how your income and expenses stack up to another person in the industry, or if you're just genuinely wondering because you're a viewer of my channel and you're like, you spend a lot of money. We're going to dive into all of that today. I'm going to lay out the real numbers, my income versus my expenses for the month of August. But for anyone who might be new to the channel, just clicking on this video, my name is Brandon. I am a New York City based international flight attendant for a European carrier. I have been a flight attendant for now 5 years. I am currently in my second year of flying with my current company. Further reference in terms of this video, there's many things that impact flight attendants and what we choose to fly. One of the major benefits of this job is schedule flexibility. Because I fly for a European carrier, my hours are actually capped at 100 flying hours for the month. I don't fly as much as I used to fly at my previous airline. In August, I had 5 trips. I worked a total of 18 days for the month and I was off for 13 days. All of my trips are international trips. Most of them are going to be one flight there and one flight back to base. To give you a little bit more context, being an international flight attendant, it does look a little bit differently because if I work a 3, a 4, a 5, or sometimes a 6-day trip, sometimes that is only one flight to the destination, laying over and working one flight back. So we call it out and back, or one and done. You work one flight that day and you're done. So that does also impact your flying a lot differently than when you work for a domestic carrier and you work a 3 or 4-day trip, and sometimes you have 1, 2, 3, or maybe 4 flights in a day. Being JFK based, my flights are from New York to Europe, which is not that long. Like, they're not very long flights in terms of international flights because of the proximity between where I start on the East Coast and where I end up in Europe. Now I'd like to take a moment and frame up the pay so you have a better understanding of how it works. At my company, we are paid twice a month. We get paid on the 15th and we get paid at the end of the month. So whatever the last day is, the 30th or the 31st, half of our guarantee at the end of the month. And then on the 15th of the following month, we get all the rest of our flying hours, the other half of our guarantee, plus all extras, plus any pay overrides that we have, plus all of our per diem for the previous month. So for each trip, I'm gonna describe what my block hours are. So this is my flight pay for the time door closed, fly, door open. 2 pay raises a year. Currently at year 2, I am making $37.87 per block hour that I fly in like 3 weeks. I get my second raise of the year. We're going up, we're going up, we're going up. My per diem, this is the money that is given to us to cover all of our time away from base. So this starts the minute we check in until when we land back in base, plus 30 more minutes when we check out from each of our trips. And our per diem just increased to $3.75 per hour. And then lastly, there are a couple of trips that include some pay overrides. They vary, but a lot of them are at our block pays. Every airline looks differently in terms of our pay structure and if you're unionized and the things that have been negotiated. I consider pay overrides everything above our block pay that can go on top of your base pay to increase your income. For today's video, I will be sharing for each trip the block hours, my per diem, and my pay override. On the flip side, I'm also going to share what I spent on each of the trips. Now, I already track my finances. It's just a general practice. It's just gonna be one number. I'm not gonna break it down, but it will include expenses such as food prepping for each of my trips because I do try very hardly to take food with me. Any activities or entertainment that I paid for on the layover, transportation costs, having to take Ubers, trains, and buses in the different cities, airport coffee, and then any grocery shopping, or in my case, general shopping that I did while I was on the layover. I need some reference for some of these trips because they happened so long ago. I have my laptop here because I have the YouTube videos. I'm looking at some of these numbers and I'm just like, if you are curious, you want to get all up in my business, let's get to it. Before we start, I want you all to drop down in the comments and let me know, do you think I am outspending what I'm making on my trips? Just the per diem though, $3.75 times every hour I'm away from base. My first trip of the month was a 3-day trip. It was actually a carryover trip, so it started on the 31st of July and it carried over into the 2nd of August. So I'm gonna break up the part that I was paid for, because for carryover trips, you get paid for the time in the month. It was a 3-day trip to Berlin. The total trip was worth 15 hours, 41 minutes. Portion that was in August, which was the trip back from Berlin to JFK, that was 8 hours and 36 minutes. The per diem is different. The per diem was all paid in August. So the per diem for that trip was 50 hours and I had 2 hours worth of overrides. The total income for that trip was $598.76. And my total expenses while I was away from home were $111.68. Another 3-day trip. This one was to Athens, JFK Athens, back to JFK. Oh yes, this was the fake red-eyes trip. I remember this one now. So this trip was a total of 19 hours and 54 minutes worth of block time. The total per diem, time away from base, was 48 hours and 45 minutes. And then there were 2 hours worth of pay overrides on this trip for me. Total income on this trip was $1,012.16. And my total expenses, actually really good. It's the least out of the whole month, were $81.49. I say that was really good because I've been trying to do better about my spending on layovers and to limit myself to like $25 to $30 a day, especially because I bring my own food for the flight. What I spend on the layover shouldn't be as much because I usually have snacks and stuff to eat in my room. So I try to stay, like for a 3-day trip, around $75 to $90. Now, the third trip of the month, this was another Berlin trip, but this was a 4-day. The trip was a total of 15 hours and 37 minutes of credit. Remember I told you all, in New York, these trips be looking real slim because we're so close to Europe, so you can get to some of these places in 6.5, 7.5 hours. So 15 hours and 37 minutes worth of block hours. The per diem, because this was a 4-day trip, was 71 hours and 32 minutes. And I had 2 hours worth of pay override. My total income on this trip was $935.13, but my expenses, $214.19. I have to go back and look at this vlog to see, hey, what was I doing for $214? And why did y'all let me spend that much? Trip 4 of the month. This was a 3-day trip. We went to Athens, JFK to Athens. My whole month was like Berlin, Athens, Berlin, Athens, Berlin, Athens. But Athens is a farther destination. This trip was worth 19 hours and 24 minutes worth of credit. The per diem, this was a very short one, was only 36 hours and 25 minutes of time away from base. But I did have 2 hours worth of pay overrides on top of all of that, bringing my total income on that trip to $946.95. My expenses were rather minimal. They were only $124. Y'all see the trend? So far, so good. This is trip number 5. I usually like to do 6 trips a month in the summertime, but this one, I guess you could say it was like 6 trips. It was a very long trip. It was a 6-day trip. I went from JFK to Rome, back to JFK, back to Rome, back to JFK. So there were 3 layovers in that trip and 4 flights. The block hours total were 33 hours and 36 minutes. Our per diem for that trip was 118 hours and 51 minutes, but there were no pay overrides on this trip. So this one actually did really well. It was a lot of per diem, so that one paid out really well. Our total income on that trip was $1,718.12, and my expenses were $226.02. Totaling up all the numbers, I asked you all to make a prediction. Total block hours for the month was 97 hours and 19 minutes. Per diem for the month, 325 hours and 54 minutes of time away from base, and I had 8 hours worth of pay overrides. So, income for the month, adding up all of my block hours, my per diem, and my overrides, $5,204.33, roughly. And my total expenses on all 5 of those trips were $775.53. So if you made a prediction that I overspent on my layovers, you were wrong, which is a good thing for me. If you predicted that I did not overspend, you were correct. My total per diem, what I made all of my time away from base, was $1,220.78. I only spent $757.33, so around $500 under. When you take the income, you subtract subtract the expenses, I netted around $4,446.80 for the month of August. Give or take my math here or there. The numbers are in, and I can say I had a pretty decent month. I will consider this like the summer flying version, because I usually consider like April to September as like those prime summertime months. We do our most flying when the schedule values are the highest and we feel like we make the most for our trips. And then you all know I work charters in the wintertime, so I don't do commercial flying. It looks like a whole different scenario, which I guess I'll do another version of this when the charter situation rolls around. Hopefully you were able to take something away from this and have a better understanding of like what pay looks like for an international flight attendant. It looks differently as an international flight attendant in the United States, where you are not capped on your hours, and as long as you are legal in terms of your rest limits, you can stack it up and run it up as much as you want to. It does look a little different for me because I fly for a European carrier, and following the EASA regulations, I am limited on the amount of hours that I may work per month. I do consider this my full-time job, but this is also like one of 5 sources of income that I have. This is like my full-time job. I have a part-time job, I have a side hustle, and I have 2 forms of passive income. This is just a fraction of what I consider like my total income. But all of those other factors do influence how much I choose to work, how much I'm comfortable spending or not spending on a layover. Sometimes I'm on a layover and we're outside. There's no limit. And there's other times that I'm more mindful about it and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna bring my food. I'm just gonna chill at the hotel. I might slam click, maybe just have one modest meal while I'm out, and that's it. Anything specifically in the video, feel free to drop them down in the comments. I'll be sure to answer them in the best way possible, you know, without giving too much business and not sharing anything I'm not supposed to be sharing. So that's it, that's all. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm Brandon, I'm a guy who flies, and I will see you all the next time.